Follow the path of a single red blood cell right now. It travels down the internal iliac artery, branching off into the microscopic prostatic vessels. Its job is simple: deliver oxygen, but today it hits a wall. The passage is narrowing. The smooth, elastic walls of the blood vessel are now coated in a rigid, waxy layer of saturated lipid plaque. The cell squeezes through, but millions of others behind it get trapped. This is not a metaphor. This is the exact mechanical strangulation happening inside your pelvic floor at this very second. And it is the real reason you are waking up 3 times a night, staring at the bathroom ceiling, waiting for a stream that barely comes. You have been told this is just a normal part of aging, that the prostate naturally enlarges as a man gets older. That is a comforting lie. What is actually happening is a localized biological suffocation, and you are actively feeding the very mechanism that is crushing your urethra. Let us look closely at the endothelial cells lining these microvessels. Normally, they produce nitric oxide. This is the chemical messenger that tells the vessel to relax and widen. But years of processing specific toxins, which we will identify shortly, have stripped this lining. Endothelial dysfunction sets in. The nitric oxide production crashes. The vessels clamp down and stay clamped. The prostate tissue is now in a state of chronic ischemia. It is literally gasping for oxygen. Biological tissues do not just die quietly when starved. They panic. To survive the low oxygen environment, the epithelial cells of the prostate begin to rapidly divide and multiply. This is cellular hyperplasia. It is a desperate survival mechanism. The tissue expands, but it has nowhere to go. It forms dense fibrotic nodules that press inward, clamping the urethra like a vice grip. Worse still is the calcification. As the inflammation persists, your body tries to wall off the damaged areas by depositing calcium and cholesterol. The once spongy, elastic prostate gland transforms into a hardened, rigid barrier. When the bladder muscle contracts to push urine out, it hits this calcified wall. The pain, the hesitation, the feeling of an incomplete void, it is all basic fluid dynamics failing against a biological concrete block. Let me expand on the sensation of that incomplete voiding. You stand there, the physical pressure mounting in your lower abdomen, yet the neurological signal to release is met with total mechanical resistance. The detrusor muscle of your bladder is working overtime, thickening itself just to force liquid through a tube that is now the width of a needle. Over time, this overexertion damages the bladder wall itself. It loses its elasticity. It becomes hypersensitive. This is why you feel an urgent, sudden need to urinate even when your bladder is only holding a few ounces of liquid. The nerves are misfiring because the entire plumbing system is under chronic, crushing hydrostatic pressure. You might think a pill can simply relax this muscle, and for a while alpha blockers might give you a slight reprieve. They loosen the grip slightly, but they do absolutely nothing to dissolve the plaque. They do not stop the cells from multiplying. They are placing a temporary chemical band-aid over a failing structural foundation. To actually stop the destruction, we have to look at the raw materials floating in your bloodstream. We have to identify the exact compounds that are calcifying those microvessels and triggering the cellular panic in the first place. The most aggressive accelerator of this process is not what you think. It is not just about eating too much red meat, though that plays a role. It is a very specific chemical reaction that happens when you combine two seemingly unrelated items. Think about a typical evening routine: a heavy dinner, perhaps fried, followed by a couple of beers to unwind. To your mind, it is relaxation. To your prostate, it is a catastrophic chemical spill. Let us isolate the first variable: ethanol. When you drink beer, the ethanol enters your bloodstream and acts as a highly effective biological solvent. It actively weakens the phospholipid membranes of your cells. It makes them hyperpermeable. Why does this matter? Because of what is circulating alongside it. If your meal contained foods fried in refined vegetable oils, your blood is currently carrying high loads of arachidonic acid. This is a highly inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid. Normally, a strong cell membrane can regulate how much of this acid enters the cell, but the alcohol has just kicked the doors wide open. The arachidonic acid floods directly into the core of the prostate tissue. Once inside, it triggers a cascade of inflammatory cytokines. The tissue swells. The heat rises locally. But the synergy of this combination goes much deeper into the very hormones that define your masculinity. Look at the adipose tissue, the visceral fat surrounding your organs. When you consistently pour ethanol into a system already saturated with omega-6 fatty acids, you awaken a specific biological catalyst, the aromatase enzyme. Its function is brutal and efficient. It hijacks your circulating free testosterone and forcibly converts it into estradiol, a potent form of estrogen. Yes, estrogen. In a male body, an artificially elevated estrogen level acting on an aging prostate is like pouring gasoline on a localized fire. It increases the density of androgen receptors. This means the small amount of DHT, dihydrotestosterone, that is present becomes weaponized. It locks onto these amplified receptors and signals the glandular cells to multiply with terrifying speed. You are actively, chemically castrating your pelvic floor while feeding a tumorous growth. And while this hormonal hijack is happening, your primary line of defense is being starved out. I am talking about zinc. A healthy prostate contains the highest concentration of zinc of any soft tissue in the human body. It acts as a chemical shield, stabilizing the DNA of the epithelial cells and preventing aggressive mutations. It also naturally regulates the fluid volume of the semen. But look back at those microvessels we discussed. The lipid plaque has calcified. The ion channels that normally absorb zinc from your bloodstream are physically blocked. You could swallow expensive zinc supplements all day long, but they are just passing through your digestive tract and out the other end. The local tissue remains barren. The shield is down. The cells are fully exposed to the inflammatory storm. This brings us to the mechanical breaking point, the structural collapse of your urinary tract. Picture the scene at 2 a.m. You are standing over the toilet. You force the detrusor muscle of your bladder to bear down. The urine flow hesitates, starts, stops, and dribbles. That stuttering stream is not just an annoyance. It is causing a severe physical phenomenon known as ischemia-reperfusion injury. Every single time the flow chokes off, the prostate and bladder tissue are starved of oxygen. The cells hold their breath. When the flow suddenly breaks through the stricture, a rush of oxygenated blood floods back into the damaged capillaries. This sudden re-entry generates a massive wave of reactive oxygen species, highly unstable molecules that literally tear the weakened cell membranes apart. You are inflicting cellular trauma on yourself every single night, accelerating the scar tissue formation. Then comes the retrograde hydrostatic pressure. The urethra is pinched so tightly by the fibrotic nodules that the normal fluid dynamics reverse. When the bladder contracts with maximum force against a nearly closed tube, the urine has to go somewhere. It gets forced backward. It shoots back up into the delicate secretory ducts of the prostate itself. This urine often carries microscopic bacterial loads and concentrated uric acid from the lower urethra. You are essentially pressure washing acidic waste and bacteria deep into the inflamed, unprotected core of the gland. This is how chronic, low-grade inflammation morphs into acute, agonizing bacterial prostatitis. It feels like a burning needle deep inside your pelvis. Finally, the neurological wiring gives out. Think about the pudendal nerve, the main nerve branching off your sacral plexus that controls your sphincter. It is designed to detect stretch and release. But after years of being stretched to its absolute physical limit against the calcified blockage, the nerve receptors begin to burn out. The myelin sheath surrounding the nerve endings degrades due to the constant state of local inflammation. The precise signal from your bladder to your brain scrambles. You lose the clear sensation of fullness until it is an absolute painful emergency, and eventually the muscle loses the ability to hold it. The leakage begins. This is not aging. This is mechanical failure due to toxic overload. This is the grim reality of microvascular strangulation. A biological pipe blocked by 70% of its diameter will inevitably fail. It is not a matter of bad genetics. It is a strict law of fluid dynamics and physics. Your body has a hard physical limit for toxin tolerance, and you are rapidly approaching it. We have reached the physiological fork in the road. You cannot negotiate with a blocked biological pipe. You either actively dismantle the lipid concrete crushing your urethra, or a urological surgeon will inevitably do it for you. Let me describe exactly what that medical intervention looks like. It is called a transurethral resection of the prostate, or TURP. They insert a rigid metal tube, a resectoscope, directly up the urethra. At the tip of this instrument is an electrified wire loop. The surgeon uses this burning wire to physically carve and shave away the inside of your prostate gland, piece by piece, to hollow out a channel. It leaves raw, cauterized tissue. It requires weeks of recovery with a catheter draining bloody urine into a bag strapped to your leg. And it carries the very real risk of permanent retrograde ejaculation or incontinence. That is the mechanical solution to a chemical problem. But your body is still capable of reversing the tissue damage if you immediately change the raw materials entering your bloodstream. You must rewrite the fatty acid profile of your cell membranes. This is not about eating a balanced diet. This is a targeted chemical counterstrike. Step 1 is eliminating the solvent. You must completely halt the intake of ethanol and refined vegetable oils. No beer, no soybean oil, no canola oil. You must starve the aromatase enzyme of its fuel so it stops weaponizing your testosterone. By removing the omega-6 influx, you immediately drop the systemic temperature of the pelvic floor. The aggressive cell division loses its chemical trigger. Step 2 is deploying the neutralizing agents. You need to replace the toxic lipids with oleocanthal. This is a naturally occurring phenolic compound found exclusively in high-quality, cold-pressed, extra virgin olive oil. Oleocanthal does not just soothe the tissue, it acts as a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. It physically binds to and disables the COX-1 and COX-2 inflammatory enzymes in your blood. It is the exact same biological mechanism as taking ibuprofen, but without destroying your stomach lining. Here is the exact protocol. You will consume exactly 15 milliliters, or 1 standard tablespoon, of high phenolic extra virgin olive oil every single night, 1 hour before you go to sleep. Why before bed? Because the hours of darkness are when the ischemia reperfusion injury is most active. You want that oleocanthal circulating through the pelvic microvessels while your bladder is attempting to fill and stretch. It will actively neutralize the reactive oxygen species that tear the cell membranes apart during the night, halting the formation of new fibrotic tissue. Step 3 is rebuilding the chemical shield. You must force the localized zinc levels back up to stabilize the glandular DNA. Supplements are highly inefficient due to the calcified ion channels. You need a bioavailable delivery system paired with plant sterols. The most efficient source on the planet is raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds. These seeds contain phytosterols, which are plant molecules that structurally mimic cholesterol in the human digestive tract. When you consume them, these phytosterols compete with the bad cholesterol for absorption in the intestines. They literally block the building blocks of the plaque from entering your bloodstream. Simultaneously, they deliver a massive payload of raw zinc directly to the depleted tissue. The application here is strict. You will consume exactly 30 grams, roughly 1 small handful, of raw pumpkin seeds every day at midday. Do not swallow them whole. You must chew them down to a complete fine paste in your mouth before swallowing. You have to mechanically break down the rigid cellulose walls of the seeds with your teeth to release the active compounds. If you do not grind them down, they will pass through your system undigested, and the zinc will never reach your pelvic floor. This is the reality of your anatomy. The human body is a highly responsive chemical machine. It built the blockage because you fed it the exact ingredients required to manufacture biological cement. If you stop providing the cement and start providing the solvent, the tissue will begin to clear. The inflammation will recede. The swollen nodules will shrink. The pressure on the detrusor muscle will lift. You will regain the structural integrity of your urinary tract. You have the exact blueprints of the destruction. You have the precise chemical protocols to reverse it. The decision to step away from the surgical table is entirely in your hands. Implement these 2 mechanical changes today. Replace the refined oil. Chew the seeds. Watch your body dismantle the blockage. If this medical breakdown exposed the truth about your symptoms, hit the like button so the algorithm pushes this data to other men quietly suffering in the dark. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for uncompromising, clinical truth about human biology. Tell me in the comments, which of the toxic combinations have you been unknowingly feeding your prostate every week? The recovery starts with the next meal.